I set the table just like I used to when the house still felt like mine. Folded the napkins into leaves, something Kaylani used to help with when she was little. She'd ask why I did it like that. I'd say, so folks know they're sittin' at a table made with care. Now ain't nobody askin' no more. The kitchen smelled of fried catfish, collard greens, and cornbread. That kind of smell that used to make folks run to the table. Tonight, not a single compliment, just noise from the TV in the other room and footsteps upstairs. My hands moved on their own, pourin' sweet tea, layin' forks just right. My late husband used to say, "Family's what you feed, Des." And I held on to that, even when it stopped feeding me back. They say presents don't always mean connection. I learned that too well. They're here, yes, but they left me years ago. Bit by bit, word by word, silence by silence. We all sat down, Kaylani, her husband Marcus, and their daughter Zuri, plates full. Eyes on phones. I tried to smile, tried to be thankful they even came. Then she said it, mid-bite, like it wasn't nothing. "I'm not moving to Georgia with you, Mama." The fork didn't drop, but I did. On the inside, I had a job lined up. A small-town librarian gig, slow-paced, just enough to keep me active. I'd been talking about it for months. Thought we'd go together. Thought we were a family. "I figured y'all would want a fresh start too," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Kaylani shook her head, chewing. "We talked, Mama. Me, Marcus, and Jordan. Zuri got school. Marcus got work. We stayin'. That town ain't for us." I blinked. We talked? There'd been a whole group chat, a decision made. Without me, I just nodded. "I get it." But my hand gripped that fork tight, so tight I could feel the metal dig into my palm. Years ago, I turned down a dream of opening my own soul food cafe. Downtown, small place, cozy, filled with laughter. They didn't want me too busy, said I'd be gone too much. I listened. Now I wondered what I was staying for. No one touched the napkins. Excusing myself, I walked down the hall. The bathroom light buzzed overhead, and the mirror met me like an old foe. Mama's face looked back at me. The same defeated look she had the day she buried her dreams to stay home with 7 of us. Am I only loved when I'm quiet, when I'm useful? Their voices floated down the hallway. Kaylani's voice cut through. "Mama too old for that country mess. We grown, we stayin' right here." My hand trembled as I wiped a tear, just one. Then I reached into my purse, pulled out my lipstick, the burgundy one James used to like, and painted on a smile. Back to the table, peach cobbler in my hands. I cracked a joke about the crust being too thick. They laughed. No one noticed how my hands shook as I set it down. After dishes were cleared, everyone went their own way. Marcus turned on the game. Kaylani made a call. Zuri sat with her iPad. I went upstairs to my bedroom, closed the door quiet, and started packing boxes. Just old clothes, books, picture frames, the kind of things you take when you know you're leaving but don't want to make a scene. Zuri knocked. "Grandma, why you fold napkins like leaves?" I smiled. "'Cause leaves fall when they ready to let go." She nodded, like that made sense to her young mind. That night, I opened my journal, wrote, "They won't follow where I go, so I'll stop asking. I'll build it somewhere else, somewhere they ain't yet ruined." Slid one of those leaf-folded napkins between the pages, pressed it down like a seal. Later, I sat on the porch, my coat wrapped around me like it could shield me from more than just the cold. Inside, Kaylani laughed on the phone, loud, carefree. I looked at my phone. The rental listing still open for that little place in Sweetwater. 2 bedrooms, a front garden, just enough. I tapped the screen. "Confirm?" "They don't gotta come," I whispered to myself, but I'm still going. The plates were cleared, but I stayed in my seat. My hands rested in my lap, fingers laced like I was in church trying not to fidget. The room was too quiet for a house that used to buzz with joy. I watched Kaylani take Zuri's plate, whisper something to Marcus. Malvern leaned against the wall, arms crossed, eyes hard. Aunt Tarina glanced at me once, then back to her phone like she ain't want no part of this mess. That silence, it wasn't peace. It cut sharp. Years ago, someone told me, You do for them until they forget you did. Back then, I called that bitter talk. Tonight, I called it prophecy. Silverware clinked in the sink, too loud for a room full of people not speaking. I stood up. Thank y'all, I'll get this, I said with a smile tight enough to crack. Nobody argued. Kaylani called me over to the couch, said she wanted to talk. I wiped my hands on my apron and followed her in. I figured she had a change of heart, maybe realized how deep that dinner cut. Maybe she'd say sorry. Instead, she sat proper, back straight, voice rehearsed. Mama, about Sweetwater, we think it's not the best move for you. We? She kept going. It's unrealistic. The job's part-time. The town's too small. We worry about you being alone out there. I blinked. Just once. I already knew the answer, but I asked anyway. Y'all had this conversation already? She nodded, quick. We've been talking. Look, we love you, but it just don't make sense. You mean it didn't make sense to you? I said, barely above a whisper. Kaylani sighed. Mama, we already decided. And just like that, I disappeared from my own story. Again. I didn't yell, didn't cry. I nodded like a woman who knew better than to show weakness in a house that only respected silence. She went to the kitchen. I stayed seated. That laptop sat open on the coffee table. They must have forgotten to close it. Curiosity? No. Instinct. I leaned forward. Joint account page. My name? Gone. I scrolled. Withdrawals. Right before the last 3 dinners. Little amounts, but enough. A pattern. It wasn't about the money. It was the message. Money talks, James used to say. And silence screams. My silence tonight had said too much. I closed the laptop gentle, like if I slammed it, the truth might spill out. Back upstairs, I went straight to my study, shut the door behind me, leaned against it like it could hold me together. They stripped me of respect, I whispered to the dark. But not my soul. I opened a drawer, pulled out that photo. Me and James standing under the balloon arch, his hand on my belly. We looked proud, hopeful. Stand tall, even when no one watches, he once told me. Well, nobody watching now. But I stood tall anyway. I sat at my desk, opened my journal, wrote it slow. I get it. Then added underneath. You will see me. I closed the book, walked to the window. The street outside was empty. Lights flickered on the corner. A car passed without stopping. They thought they made the final decision, but the story ain't over. Morning light crept in through the blinds like it had something to confess. The phone sat off the hook, line humming dead. I stared at it, then picked it up, pressed it to my ear just to hear that empty buzz. That sound brought me back. When I went into labor with Malvern, I tried to call my sister-in-law for help. I was scared, alone. James was out of town on a trucking job, and Kaylani was barely walking. I called 6 times, nobody picked up. Phones ring, but folks choose what calls to answer. I set it back, careful, then walked down the hallway. The pile of old mail stared me down like it had something to say. Mostly bills. But one envelope caught my eye. Cream-colored, thick paper, marked librarian program. My name printed clean. I didn't open it yet. I pressed it to my chest, just held it there. That envelope felt like breath in a room gone stale. I slipped it under my sweater, warm against my skin, and stepped outside. Said I needed air. Told myself it was just a walk. Truth was, I needed to be out of that house before I forgot who I was. Southside was alive. Kids jumping rope, Miss Alberta fanning herself on her porch. Smell of BBQ rolling off someone's back lot. This place never changed, not really. It remembered who I used to be. Problem was, most folks only remembered my mama. Ms. Walker's daughter, they still called me. They never saw the woman I tried to be. At the corner, Shayla waved me over. Young thing, maybe late 20s. Her hair was slicked up high, lips pressed in frustration. Miss Odessa? She started. Can you believe my mama planned her whole birthday dinner and ain't even invite me till last minute? Like I ain't her child. I listened, nodded, let her vent. Then I said, sometimes folks treat you based on what you've allowed. That ain't your fault, baby, but it is your pattern. She paused, blinked. Yeah, maybe. But her next words sat on my chest the whole way home. Folks treat you how you let 'em. That stuck deeper than it should have. I passed the corner store, paused just outside. A gust of wind rattled the newspaper box, and I remembered something. Kaylani was 13, sick with the flu. I had a job interview that day. Radio station receptionist down on 87th. Good hours, benefits. Could have finally stepped out of the house. She had a fever, crying. Mama, don't go. So I stayed. Made her soup. Rubbed her back. Missed that interview. Years later, I overheard her tell someone, Mama never really had ambition. Just stayed home. She forgot. I didn't. That day sat buried inside me like a stone. Nobody ever asked what I gave up. They just assumed I never reached. I stood there, still as winter, outside that store, and whispered to myself, I've always been their excuse to stay comfortable. When I got back home, the house sounded different. Not quiet, just indifferent. Kaylani and Malvern were in the kitchen, laughing at a video. And they didn't even notice I'd gone. Zuri was at the table, crayons scattered. She looked up. Grandma, look, she said, holding up her drawing. A tree, leaves blowing away from the branches. I leaned down, studied it. Baby, I said, sometimes leaves gotta let go to let the roots grow. She tilted her head. What's that mean? I smiled, just a little. You'll understand when you're not trying so hard to stay where folks planted you. I kissed her forehead, stood straight, and walked back to my room. Still hadn't let go of that envelope. I shut the door, sat on the edge of my bed, pulled the letter out, hands shaking just a bit, opened it. We are thrilled to offer you. I didn't need to read the rest. My throat tightened, not from sadness, but from the weight lifting. My phone buzzed. Message from Kaylani. You still cooking tonight? I stared at it for a beat. Then I turned the phone off, placed it in the drawer, and locked it. Not tonight, I said to the room. Not ever the same again. Kaylani called it a family dinner, but it felt like a trap. She texted me earlier. Mama, we'll do it at your place, just like old times. I knew what that meant. I cooked everything. Fried chicken, greens, cornbread, sweet tea in the same chipped pitcher. By the time the sun dipped low, the house smelled like Sundays used to, but none of that warmth was left. Malvern walked in first, grinning, followed by Pastor Jules, holding a Bible like a prop. Mama, Malvern said, Pastor's been wanting to talk with you about staying rooted. I nodded, but my hands stayed damp from the dishwater. The table looked polished, napkins folded neat, but it felt like a stage. Kaylani guided me to the far end without asking. Malvern bowed his head, blessed the food without even glancing at me. I sat there thinking, I was their mother, but tonight I was the housekeeper with a front row seat to my own fading. They started eating like everything was normal. Then the comments started slipping through. Kaylani, soft smile, sharp tongue. Some folks don't understand how important legacy is. Pastor Jules chimed in, like it was rehearsed. Some women get restless when their children grow. They forget where home is. I chewed slowly, tasting every year I'd put myself last. Zuri tried to speak. Grandma got a letter. But Kaylani cut her off, eyes warning. Eat, Zuri. Their voices moved like waves over me, reframing my life as choices, not sacrifices. I set my fork down, the sound louder than I meant. Y'all ever wonder if I had dreams too? My voice was steady, but sharp enough to cut the air. The room went still. Pastor Jules blinked, Malvern shifted. Kaylani leaned back, eyes flicking to the pastor like he'd start preaching. I started calm. I gave up college, not because we couldn't afford it, because somebody told me, the baby needs you. I covered your bills, Malvern, when you were out of work. Sold my jewelry so Kaylani could drive her first car. And now you call my sacrifices choices. Kaylani tried to pivot. We all made sacrifices, Mama. I cut in, my voice sharper now. But only mine came with silence and service. Malvern looked down at his plate. Pastor Jules murmured a verse that hung dead in the air. It ain't disrespectful to have dreams, I said. It's disrespectful to pretend mine never mattered. Kaylani's mask cracked. If you wanted something else, you should have said something before now. The audacity of it hit me like cold water. I looked at Zuri, who sat frozen, seeing her mother deflect and her grandmother stand tall. I didn't yell. I didn't beg. I pushed my chair back, wiped my mouth with the napkin I'd folded hours ago. Tonight y'all ate good. Tomorrow, feed yourselves. I stood and walked out, each step louder than any scream, leaving the table heavy with a silence they couldn't escape. In my room, the door clicked shut soft. I sat on the edge of my bed, my heart steady but hot. Even Jesus turned tables once, I whispered. I opened my laptop, the registration form glowing. The cursor blinked like it was waiting for me to claim my own life. My finger hovered over submit when I heard it. A knock, light against the door. Mama? Kaylani's voice, soft now, almost unsure. I didn't open the door. It was mid-afternoon when I heard the knock. Slow, not like the night before. I stayed seated on the couch, folding Zuri's drawing between my hands. Kaylani stood at the door holding a casserole dish, her smile stretched too tight. Mama, she said, I know things went wrong. Can we start fresh? Her eyes flicked down the hall, like she was checking who might see. I didn't get up. Your timing says more than your words. She hesitated. Folks been talking. You know how neighbors get. I wanted to fix things. I watched her like you watch a storm roll in, quiet but already knowing. She set the dish down and sat at the edge of the armchair. I made peach cobbler, your favorite. Sweet, I said, still holding the paper in my hand. But sweetness don't erase everything. She started listing things she'd done lately. I helped with the gas bill. I called Sweetwater to see if they'd still hold the job. I cut my eyes at her, not my voice. She trailed off, but then tried again. I miss my mother. The room felt heavy. Malvern edged out from the kitchen doorway but stayed quiet, like he wanted to catch the show. I've heard apologies, I said slowly. But I learned actions define your love, not apologies. Why now, Kaylani? I asked. She twisted her hands. Because I don't want to lose you. Her words slid across the room, but didn't land. I stood up, slow. You already built a world where I didn't fit. You just didn't expect me to walk out of it. I moved closer to her, not to comfort, but to make sure she heard. I won't let silence be a weapon anymore. I won't be your fallback when it's convenient. Mama? She tried to interrupt. No. My voice was steady. You're gonna listen. For once. Zuri peeked from the hallway, clutching her doll. She didn't move or blink. She knew. This was the day the ground under our feet changed. I'll build my life on respect, I said. You want to be part of it? You build it too. If not, I'll walk away on my terms. Kaylani's mouth opened, but no words came out. She looked small, mumbling something about being misunderstood. I stepped back, turned, and walked to my room, closed the door, leaned against it. My heart pounded, but my hands were steady. On the dresser sat the invitation letter, corners worn from me holding it too much. I picked it up, tightened my grip. Apology without change is just noise, I whispered. Late that night, I heard footsteps in the hallway. Slow, careful. A soft knock at my door, then silence. I didn't open it. The house was quiet when I woke up, the kind of quiet that feels planned. I slipped out of bed, bare feet cold against the floor, and headed to my desk. That's where I'd left it, right on top. But the paper with my name, my future, the letter, was gone. I moved books, opened every drawer, flipped through old receipts and dusty folders. Nothing. My chest tightened. Zuri stepped in, rubbing her eyes. She froze, seeing the mess. Mama, what's wrong? I didn't sugarcoat. The letter's missing. She helped me look. Nothing under the couch, not behind the dresser. I turned to her. You see anybody come in here? Zuri hesitated. Kaylani? She was standing in the hall a long time last night, but she didn't come in. I think. That, I think, held weight. I sat back in the chair, stared at the space where the letter had been. My voice came low, nearly breathless. They're still trying to control my story. I moved through the house that morning like a shadow. Asked every one of them. soft, measured questions. No anger, just watching, listening. Malvern shrugged. You probably misplaced it, Des, like that time with the savings jar. His words brought back the sting. How my emergency fund disappeared and he blamed the plumbing man. I knew better. Kaylani crossed her arms. This is drama, Mama. You always making up drama when you don't get your way. I looked at her. Not the words, her eyes. Something in them twitched when I said the word letter. My phone rang. Pastor Jules. He asked if I was still coming to Sunday service. Said he'd heard I'd been going through something mental. That told me everything. Somebody was talking, painting me unstable before I even stood up. I wrote one line in my notebook. They trying to gaslight me in my own house. Later that afternoon, while Kaylani went out for her usual clearing my head walk, Zuri did what I didn't ask, but maybe silently hoped. She slipped into Kaylani's room. Tucked between two old church bulletins on her bookshelf, the letter, my name still on it, my dream folded like a receipt. Zuri didn't take it. She took a photo, brought it to me like an offering. I held the phone, stared, closed my eyes, pain, but also clarity. I told Zuri, don't say nothing to nobody. Why? Sometimes the truth ain't for fireworks, it's for freedom. I sat down and wrote a new letter, not to them, to me, a resignation. Not from a job, from being silent in my own life. Then I made a call, asked for a reprint, spoke to a kind voice on the other end who confirmed orientation was still open. I'd be there. I packed a bag. Not everything, just what I needed. Malvern stood in the hallway. Didn't say a word, just watched. When Kaylani returned, she found me dressed, my coat on, bag by the door. Mama, where you going? I met her eyes. If I waited for permission, I'd never live, and I ain't dying while standing still. I walked out. Didn't say where, didn't have to. That night, Zuri sat on the couch, eyes locked on Kaylani, who looked pale, like something just cracked under her feet. Later, Kaylani opened her top drawer. Her eyes widened. Wasn't just a letter gone. It was the control they thought they'd always have. I came back late in the afternoon, groceries in hand. No one expected me, and I didn't offer explanation. I just walked in, put my purse down, and started cooking. Cornbread, baked chicken, collard greens with smoked turkey neck. The kind of meal you only make when company's coming or something big's about to happen. I pulled out the good plates, the ones they knew better than to touch unless it was Christmas or a funeral. Malvern peeked his head into the kitchen. Everything all right? I didn't look up. Dinner's at 6. By the time the clock struck, they all showed, like flies to honey. Kaylani still had attitude in her eyes, but she sat. Zuri looked cautious. Terrence came out of nowhere, pulled up a chair without saying a word. Even Malvern put on cologne, like he smelled something was different. I set the table, napkins folded, glasses full, candles lit. It looked like peace, but I knew better. Sometimes peace looks like a trap set with love, I whispered to myself. We sat. Forks clinked against porcelain. No one talked, just chewing, shifting in chairs, clearing throats. I served every plate myself. Sat down last. I didn't raise my voice once. Didn't need to. My presence was louder than anything they could have said. I started speaking slow, like easing into cold water. I remember when Zuri was little. Wouldn't eat nothing unless it was cut in a star shape. Zuri smiled faintly. Kaylani rolled her eyes. Selective memory sure is sweet. Malvern tried to laugh. Now, let's not start with... I held up a hand. Let's just speak truth tonight. Nothing more, nothing less. That table went still, like time froze. I turned to Malvern first. Thank you, for at least acting like you supported me when I got the job offer. He blinked. But I know you showed Kaylani that letter. He looked down, like a kid caught cheating off a test. Kaylani snapped. I didn't steal nothing. Zuri spoke, voice clear. We both know where I found it. Kaylani's face hardened. I didn't raise my tone. You were afraid I'd shine without your permission. Voices rose. Kaylani accusing Zuri, Malvern muttering about misunderstanding, everyone trying to explain, justify, deflect. But I stayed quiet. I finished my plate, wiped my mouth, stood up. This wasn't a debate. This was me drawing a line. I walked to the sideboard, pulled out a folder. This is my itinerary, my dorm key, my ID badge. I move in Monday. The room went still again. Chairs didn't squeak. Even Terrence held his breath. I've given this family all I had. Now it's time to give myself the same. Kaylani stood, mouth twisted. You serious? I didn't answer her. Didn't have to. She stormed off. Malvern didn't move, just stared at the spot on the table where I'd set the candles. Zuri came around and hugged me tight. She didn't say nothing. Didn't need to. I walked to the kitchen, turned off every light, one by one. The last one I let linger for a moment. Then, click, Terrence finally spoke. Auntie, they'll get it too late. But that don't mean you're wrong. Later that night, I laid in bed, suitcase by the door. My eyes wide open, staring at nothing. Then, a knock. Soft. Hesitant. You still leaving, Mama? Kaylani's voice, barely more than a whisper. The road into Camellia Springs felt narrower this time, full of ghosts I both invited and feared. I drove slowly, windows down, letting the warm breeze bring in memories. The smell of magnolia trees, the laughter at Sunday dinners gone by. I saw Inez sweeping her porch and waved. She smiled without pretense. Tavares stood by his store, tipped his hat. These faces held stories. Pulling past the old community center, I caught sight of its faded sign. I remembered nights teaching kids these same halls. Someone once whispered, "Old folks belong in quiet corners." The words stung harder now than ever. I gripped the wheel tight and murmured, "Not this one." The gathering was modest. Folding chairs, a table at the front with cookies and lemonade. Folks drifted in. Zuri sat beside me, looking small but steady. Kaylani lingered near the back, arms crossed, eyes shadowed. The room felt hollow until a voice cut through. Tarina's cousin, loud in the hush. At your age, you should know your place, stepping into young folks' business. Silence swallowed the room. My jaw tightened. But I didn't shrink. I rose, measured, and met her gaze. My age gives me wisdom, not less voice. There was something in my stillness that made the room lean in. Kaylani's lips parted, confusion across her face. The hush stretched until a volunteer rolled out a dusty TV, plugged it in. Flicker, then image, a younger me, hands raised, talking about community, and there, a young Kaylani on camera saying, "If Mama had her way, the world would see her name." My breath stuttered for a moment, then I stepped forward. Funny how words fade when convenience comes calling. She lunged to stop it. "Turn it off!" But eyes turned, murmurs rose, faces shifted. The truth leaked out, pulling people in. Tavares Moon stood slowly, cane in hand. "Odessa, you taught me Sunday school back when I had nothing." His grandchildren stepped forward. He held their hands. "This town never forgot you." The room responded. Applause, quiet tears, nods, not for spectacle, for redemption. My chest cracked open, but not in pain, in vindication, in relief. I caught Kaylani's gaze, shock, regret, something raw I hadn't seen before. When people left, folding chairs scraping, I stayed in the glow of the stage lights, alone. Under dim bulbs, I felt something shift. At the back, a silhouette held tight. Kaylani, fists clenched, watching. "If you want this broken," I whispered under my breath, "come claim it." The morning came slow, with no alarms, no rush, just light sneaking through the blinds and the sound of birds talking to each other like they had something worth saying. I sat up, bones stiff but spirit steady, and reached for my robe. Something about the air told me it wasn't the same as yesterday. Camellia Springs had shifted. Maybe not the buildings or the roads, but the way it breathed, like it had exhaled something it had been holding too long. I made coffee, poured it in my old chipped mug, and stepped onto the porch. That chair creaked like it always had, but today it didn't groan under a tired woman. It rocked with me. The heat of the cup warmed my fingers, but my chest held the heat of something deeper, a quiet kind of triumph, the kind that don't need no clapping. My eyes drifted toward the road. I thought about Tavares's words last night, that the town hadn't forgotten me. And for a moment, I believed him. I could see those faces, hear their voices blending with my own history, but it wasn't a victory lap. This was something else, a reclaiming. I whispered, "What does peace look like when you've carried storms all your life?" No answer came, and I didn't expect one. The gravel cracked beneath tires just past 9. I didn't have to look to know it was her. The way the car pulled in, cautious, like it wasn't sure it belonged. Kaylani stepped out, holding a worn brown envelope like it weighed more than it should. She didn't speak, just stood there at the foot of the porch like she was waiting for a verdict. I didn't give her one. I nodded to the empty rocker beside me. She walked up, every step heavier than the last. When she finally sat, she didn't meet my eyes, just placed the envelope between us. "It's the deed to your house," she said, voice almost a whisper. "And the grant check. Everything I blocked." I didn't flinch. I opened it, skimmed the pages, saw the numbers. All that struggle, all that pride, boxed up in paperwork and money. I didn't cry. I just nodded, slow. Not because I forgave, because I understood. She didn't ask how I felt. She didn't try to explain herself like before. She just looked out at the yard. "I didn't come here to ask for forgiveness," she said. "I came to tell you. I finally see you, really see you. And I know now I've been fighting the wrong fight." Her voice cracked. "I was scared. Scared of being second to you. Like your shine would make me invisible." I didn't rush her. Let her speak. She needed to let it out. That resentment she carried. It had always been about her reflection, not mine. I took a deep breath before I said anything. "You don't need my forgiveness," I told her. "You need your own." Silence settled again, not heavy this time, just honest. "My door was never closed," I added. "You just stopped knocking." We sat like that. Two women with the same blood, the same stubborn fire, rocking side by side. No big moment, no dramatic hug, just the quiet creaking of wood and years unspoken starting to loosen their grip. Later, we talked, like mama and daughter. Not perfect, but true. I told her stories I'd buried deep, not because I didn't want her to know, but because I didn't think she cared to listen. Stories about working 2 jobs and hiding my dreams so she could chase hers. She blinked back tears. "I didn't know," she whispered. "I know," I said. She told me she'd been thinking about leaving the city for a bit. Said the noise didn't feel like power anymore, just clutter. I didn't offer advice, just reached out and laid my hand on hers. "Sometimes," I said, "we gotta lose the noise to hear our own truth." The day moved on, sun climbing higher. By afternoon, folks started showing up. Miss Loretta with a peach cobbler, Tavares carrying a casserole, even some kids from the youth group with smiles too wide for early fall. They talked about bringing back the fall festival, wanted me to lead it. I laughed. Then I looked around and realized, maybe I could. Maybe it was time. They asked if I'd consider taking a seat on the town council. I paused, not because I doubted myself, but because I finally felt like I had a choice. "All right," I said, and meant it. From inside, I saw Kaylani watching us. She wasn't wearing her usual armor. Just a soft smile, arms crossed, like she was finally home too. And that night, we sat down for dinner. No cameras, no audience. Just family. Real, messy, whole. After the dishes were done and the house had gone quiet, I stepped outside barefoot. The grass cool beneath my feet, sky bleeding into dusk. I tilted my head to the stars, felt the weight of the moment settle. "Mama," I whispered, "I think I finally came home."